Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the YouTube channel grecochess, the channel of the game of chess. And in this video, we continue facing the chess.com bots. If you've seen the previous videos, we've been able to easily defeat all the beginner bots, only wins, no draws or losses. With some difficulty, the intermediate ones, we had a few draws and losses. And now we're playing the advanced bots. And let's share the screen and see exactly what is happening. You see here, we first started with the 15 beginner bots. No problem. We defeated each one of them twice, once with one, once with black. Intermediate, we're doing okay until we faced a Mir from Turkey. We needed to struggle to, especially when I had the black pieces to win. And then time for the advanced ones. After some difficulty, we survived. Advanced. Three bots have 1500. We defeated them again with some difficulty. And then it was time for the 1600. Pablo, Joel, we defeated them. And now we are playing versus Isabel. Isabel, first game I had white and Isabel had black. And they won. Due to a trick that I hope the viewers can learn it for their own games, when the opponent thinks that they want a pawn in the center, only to find out that you have suddenly a discovered check, not a discovered check, you have a check out of nowhere, and while the opponent is facing the check, you win the opponent's queen. That was then, but now we have the black. Isabel has the white. Buenas, let's do this, says Isabel from Costa Rica. And let's begin. Isabel starts with her at the opening knight to f3. Aren't we feeling sophisticated today? Who knows? I'm replying pawn to d5. Upon the center, of course, not the e5 that the knight could take. Pawn to c4. The blunders are all there, the board waiting to be made. I know, Isabel. Let's see who will make them. How to reply? I don't want to take because I remove my pawn from the center. And it's not so much free pawn because then pawn goes to d4, my pawn's attacked, and I'll have a tough time defending. So I'm going to defend it by moving my pawn to c6. Pawn to e3 for Isabel. And let's continue developing knight f6. Knight to c3, attacking my pawn twice with the pawn on c4 and the knight on c3. Defend it 3 times. So I'm safe there. Knight f6, pawn c6, and queen d8. So I'm going to pin your knight on f3 with my bishop. The queen is behind that. Okay, you take my pawn on d5 with your c-pawn. I'm going to take with my knight. Or should I? Maybe it's better with a pawn because I don't want your pawn to go to e4 and chase my knight away. And I don't have isolated pawn now, as I was afraid. Okay, I'll take it with my pawn. You attack my knight. Excuse me, my attack, not my knight. My bishop on g4 that has pinned your knight f3. I'm going to take it back to h5. So I'm continue pinning your knight. Again, my knight goes to g6. You are not pinning your knight any longer, but think about it. You have opened your king side. Now my knight is under attack. Where should they put it? And my queen fortunately is defending the d5 pawn. I'm going to place it here on e4, attacking your knight on c3. Check from g5. I wish I had the pawn to reply, but I'm going to put my knight to stop your check. That is dangerous because if you take it pawn takes back, uh, then you can have a double check and threaten my rook. So I'm going to place my queen on c7, attack your knight on e5. What are you planning? You'll see what I'm planning now. Attacking from, ooh la la, h file. No, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to take your knight on c3, and I'm attacking your queen and your bishop. If you take my, oh yes, you didn't take my rook. Now I can take your knight. Your queen took on d5. Things are not going well at all. For me, I'm a pawn down. What will happen if my pawn goes to e6? Attacking your queen and also opening, freeing my bishop on f8. The queen goes to e4. What can I do now? The bishop goes to e7, threatening your pawn on g5. Can I win it safely without any repercussions? I think so. Yep, I got the pawn back. I hope so. Let's see. Your queen goes to d4, attacking my pawn on g7. But of course, my knight cannot take your queen because of that pin, but I'm going to attack your queen with my bishop on f6 and I save my pawn on g7. Your queen now goes to c4. What can I do? Can I castle and have my rook go to d8 and inside the game? I think so. Okay. Can we exchange queens? Yep. Material is the same. Now let's see how are we doing. 3 pawn islands each of us. I have an isolated pawn on c6 in front of my king. Not a good idea. I'll try to, however, to attack your pawn on h3, the h pawn. Place 2 rooks behind it. I want the pawn on h3. You attack my pawn on c6. I'm going to defend it. And attack your rook at the same time. 2 rooks there. Can I don't like your rooks on the same line because they can go to d7 with the check and then you can start winning pawns. I'm going to initiate exchanges. Yep. So I exchange one of your rooks. Now let's see. Your bishop on b2 is liberated, attacks my pawn on g7. I'm not going to allow it. I'm going for exchange of bishops. Yep. And now we're going to rook ending. And I think I have an extra pawn somehow. Yes. So this means that if only I can exchange rooks, I should have advantage. I'm attacking your pawn on c4, even though it's protected by your rook. My knight go to b6 and be near these pawns. Yes, let's see if I can win the a3 pawn. Let's bring my rook here. Now goes to c4. Oh, well, your king can go to d2. Ah, your pawn went to f3. Sorry, I didn't even notice that. My king is ready to win the a3 pawn. Got it. And now I'm threatening the other pawn on b4. Yep, I got it. You're going to win my pawn. Oh, yeah, the other one. So I better start winning pawns here. Let's win the, okay, 1 pawn win. Take one of my pawns. Not yet. Good. So I just have enough time to save one of my pawns. I'm going to start pushing the c pawn, see how far I can go. You can take my other pawn if you like. but rather you don't take them. Your king is blocked, cannot go to the c file. You're playing well. I'm going to need to find some tricks. Let's see what trick can help you. My c pawn is near promotion. Two more squares to go. c2, one more square. Let's exchange these pawns on e. And now let's see, how can I stop my c pawn from promoting? Oh, there's a pin. I cannot push it. Oh, your king is too near my pawn. The idea is my king to go. Oh, yeah, you know. Let me check and send your king far away. Now my king can go to b1 and ready to promote. Okay, you lost your rook. I didn't promote, but you lost your rook. And now all I need to do is take your f pawn. Not going to win that easily as I was hoping, but I'm still going to win. Yep, now you only have your king, you have a rook and pawn. The rook alone is enough to give me the win. But the pawn also helps because hopefully it will become promoted. Soon I'll have a second queen, not a second queen. Soon I'll have a queen in addition to my rook. And let's hope no stalemate. Yep. Have a queen if you can keep it. I think so. Now my rook will go to the g file. No stalemate. You can go to h4. Good. And now here my queen can go to h6. And I won. Good game. I'm going to have to study that one. Want to play again? Well, I played with you twice. Once with white, once with black. And I won. Okay, with white, I used these tricks that I hope for my users can learn how to use it and how to avoid it with the supposedly pawn that you got in the center, but later you lost your queen. Here it was mostly a battle of attrition, meaning I was able to win more pawns than you and promote one of my pawns. I saw which pawn had the best chance to promote. And later on, although you stopped it, you didn't promote, you had to sacrifice your rook for that. But let's look at the review. Let's see what does the computer think about that. 80.8 accuracy for me, 73.8 for Isabel. And I played as if my rating was 1900 and Isabel's was 1550. And how did we do in the categories? Grade 3 versus, no, brilliant. Grade 3 versus 2 for me, book 5 versus 4 for Isabel. Best 26 for me, 25 for Isabel. Wow. Excellent. 10 for me, 9 for Isabel. Good. 9 versus 9 me, 8 Isabel. And now in the negatives, I had 5 inaccuracies. Isabel had 4. Mistakes 3 for Isabel, 2 for me. Misses 4 for me, 3 for Isabel. And Isabel blundered twice. So it seems that the game was decided in the blunders. But let's go through the details move by move to see where were Isabel's blunders and what did they miss or make mistakes. Now you see here you see the little booklet. It means that here it means until the fifth move for Isabel we're following theory. And let's see, the computer thinks until here it is book and Isabel is ahead by 0.16, which doesn't mean too much, but here the computer thinks I played just a good move. The check mark means good. Well, I should have taken the knight. I'm going to explain why I did not take the knight is because I want to keep the knight pinned. If you have a piece pinned, keep it pinned as long as possible until you can use the pin to win material. But the computer thinks it's better to change it. It's better to take the knight. Who knows why? There are many who knows why. That's what can I say? If I become grandmaster level, I might be able to see the reason why. Good again. We finished 5 moves, by the way, and Isabel is leading by 0.34. Now let's see how things continue. Tries to stop the pin and go back. Mistake again. Computer thinks it better win the knight. Computer thinks I made a mistake and I'm down by 1.24. Let's see where the game will start changing. Inaccuracy. Yes, here is the best, of course, the only move that saves my bishop. Yes, let me say this to the viewers. It is better if you don't push your pawns too much, especially in the beginning, because you open avenues against your king. Your pawn has a one-move attack, and the moment I save my knight, of course, if I don't save my knight, it's wonderful. You won the knight and you're ahead. But if I save my knight and I have many squares I can save it, then your king becomes exposed. There are too many avenues opening towards your king. The question is where to put my knight. I don't want to lose my pawn on d5. That's why I'm not going to put my knight on d7. There are many squares, h5, e4. I went for the e4. Why? Because, of course, I don't want my knight to be in the edge. Computer wants me to put it on d7. The problem is if I put it there, I lose my pawn to d5. I don't have no idea why the computer thinks this is better. Okay. Check. It got me a little bit nervous to check, although the computer thinks it's just a good move. And great move, my knight to 6-6. I mean, what else could I do? Think about it. How many illegal moves did I have? Knight goes to d7, but then my pawn is lost. Knight to c6. What else? And nothing else. So why is it great? Out of 2 moves, I chose, I wouldn't say randomly, but chose one of them. Computer thinks is great. 2 moves that for my skills, they're almost the same, and I happen to choose the one that computer thinks is great. That is wonderful. Knight goes to e5 and threatens. What is a threat? If Isabel could play again, knight goes to c6, I take it, bishop checks, and then my only legal move is put queen here and lose my queen. Oh, it's worse than what I thought. I only thought that I would lose the rook on a8. That is why I must stop this thing. How do I stop it? Queen to c7. I need to protect my knight a second time. Computer thinks it had better take the knight on c3. I'm not sure if that would really better. I guess I'm taking the queen, but my mind was first defend, especially since my king was in danger. Okay, takes. The computer doesn't like it. But we finished 10 moves here. Okay, let's see the score. After 10 moves, Isabel is ahead by 0.32. And Isabel takes on g6, great move. And what do I do now? I'm afraid of losing, not only losing the pawn on d5, but then my queen on c7 is in danger. And I stop it by taking knight on c3, and the computer thinks it's inaccuracy. Computer wants me to take the knight on g6, but then knight takes, oh yeah. On d5, it's very dangerous. My queen under attack. My pawn is lost. Okay, recapture here. Yes, I take it. Great is a computer. What else did I have? I mean, I just postponed for one move to recapturing. I don't understand why the computer thinks these moves are great, especially this one was so obvious if I didn't want to be behind the material. Yes, takes my pawn, and now a pawn down. I really started feeling not so nice. I attack the queen. Computer wants me to put my rook in h4, maybe the rook lift as I call it. Queen to e4 inaccuracy. Yes, computer says they better start exchanging to create my isolated pawn, which they're going to do later. Let's see what's happening. And pawn, my bishop to e7, inaccuracy. Wants me to start castling. Pawn to b4 and Yes, it's true that they left the pawn on g5 hanging. That is a blunder, clearly. Not a major one, not like the blunder of the previous game that basically said the game. Now I just win a pawn. Not exactly win, take the pawn back. So now we're even immaterial. Another blunder. My knight on c6 is pinned. It cannot win the queen. But what can I win? That's the computer says. Let's see. It seems I missed something. It wants my pawn to go to a6. Why? The moment it goes there, white has to take my knight. Otherwise, the queen is lost. Queen goes. Let's see. And then by the queen, and they attack the rook. But the queen will go to g7. I was afraid of my pawn on g7. That is why bishop goes to f6. It was not a random move. It is save my pawn g7, attack the queen on d4. Queen changes to c4. It will finish, yes, the 15 moves. After my 15 move, when I got my pawn back, I'm ahead by 0.78. So things started going my way until now, but still have a long way for the game. We saw the blunder. Mistakes is a computer. My queen said castling was a mistake. They would rather have me do what? Rook goes to c8 to facing the opposite queen. Computer, wait a minute. Computer wanted my king to go to b8. Why? Let's see, if my king went to b8, the bishop would go to b5, which is queens, and there ahead by a piece. I don't get it really. My king goes to b8, as the computer suggests. What's going to happen? You may think that the bishop, if it moves, the queen is lost, but no. But the bishop can go to b5, and then if I exchange queens, I'm a piece down. If I don't exchange them, my queen is pinned. No, it's not pinned any longer because king's on b8. But what can my queen do from there? I have no idea. Okay, I don't agree with the computer. Who knows who is right? Yes, exchange of queen. Now I have an isolated pawn on c6. Isolated pawns are relatively easy targets. What white needs to do, what Isabel should try to do is see how to win my pawn. Not very easy because on a light color, while the bishop, remaining bishop is dark colored, but try to place the rooks, or perhaps even exchange the 3 pawns ABC with my 2 pawns AC and create a pass pawn. This is the plan that Isabel should start thinking about. Places the bishop to b2, mistake. Not so bad, at least bishops are developed. Each at least saves the c3 pawn. Computer would rather have it go to d2. So Isabel can move the c3 pawn without being afraid of losing the then the rook is behind that. It's not even so easy as it looks. The rook to e5, inaccuracy. Scenario goes to h5. I'm bringing the rook in the game. The rook lifts as it's called. A computer would rather have my pawn go to e5. Yes, because like that, I would get rid of one of my two isolated pawns, one with the other. But we finished 20 moves, and what's the score? I'm ahead by 0.8. Not too much. Still a lot of game to be decided. Let's continue. King goes to e2. Good idea, because then the rooks a1 and h1 are connected. My rook to h8. Yep. Now I'm going to win the h3 pawn and be a pawn ahead if things go my way. And it seems they're going. I got a pawn. But computer would rather have my uh, rook go to f5. I'm not sure why. Yes. Rook to d6, threatening my pawn on c6. Okay, good as an idea of Isabel, but I can stop it with my king to c7. Rook to d1 and threatening, the threat is the following, that if Isabel could play again, rook goes to d7 check, and then wins my c7 pawn, uh, bringing the other rook here, possibly also winning my other pawn on a7, and having a passed pawn, and really things could be tough for me if things went like that. But fortunately, let's see if it's a good move. I placed my rook on d8. Yes, the best move is a computer. And now Isabel is forced to exchange rooks, otherwise Isabel loses a rook. And we finished 25 moves, and now I'm ahead by 0.72. Still a lot of game to be played. What's happening is we're going to an ending where both sides have a rook and a bishop, same color bishops, by the way. That is crucial because if rooks are exchanged, opposite color bishops usually lead to a draw. Same color bishops, and in addition, 6 pawns for me, 5 for Isabel. I have one more pawn. No passed pawn yet, but I have 3 islands, and Isabel has 2, which gives her a small advantage in this sense. Although better have an extra pawn uh, if you, even if it costs an pawn island. And let's see how things are going. One who needs to think what will happen if everything disappears, meaning if only kings and pawns remain. I think I have a small advantage with my extra pawn, especially 4 versus 2 on the king side. Pawn to c4, yes, opens a line for the b2 bishop. Yes, I place my bishop on f6, so don't lose my g7 pawn. Exchange, and we have a rook ending. If you're down, usually rook endings are draws. That is why not a bad decision from Isabel to exchange the bishops. And the question is how to play now both sides. We have a rook ending. Rook endings are usually draws. But what I need to think, what both of us need to think, is how to create pass pawns, push them to promotion. For the time being, nobody has a pass pawn. Rook to c1 protects the c4 pawn. My rook goes to h4, attacks it. Pawn to a3. Computer would rather have it go to a4. Yes, you want to push your pawns as fast as possible. King goes to b6. Not a good idea. Create a pawn chain. How with my pawn to g5? Move number 30, check c5, but my king goes to b5. I wanted to go to b5 because by doing so, it will go to a4 and a3. Of course, the rook can defend it, but then I can bring my other rook to attack it, and if I win the a-pawn, I'm doing even better. That's why I didn't want to go back all the way to c7. I want to be attacking, even though the computer thinks only good move. And what's the score after 30 moves? I'm ahead by 0.7. Rook protects the pawn. My rook goes to c4. Not a good idea, says the computer. I was hoping to start attacking these ABC pawns. And now we're even, 0.00. Pawn to 3. Computer wanted the king to go to d4. Yes, I saw it. Of course, my rook can go back to h4 and save itself, but it would be a waste of 2 moves for my rook while Isabella could have king becoming more active. My king goes to a4. And computer thinks if instead I checked on c2, I would be ahead by, look at that, by 3.01. And now I'm down by, believe it or not, by 1.93. I want to win the a3 pawn. That's the whole point. King goes to d2. Computer wants it to go to d3. And now I'm up again by 1.43. I win the pawn. And miss. Yes, look what's happening. My pawn now at 8-7 is going to be lost if Isabel can find a steward. First threat is my rook. I win the pawn, another pawn I win, and now it's the time for the steward. After 35 moves, what is the score? I'm ahead by 0.26. This game goes back and forth. Nothing is sure yet. And of course, Isabel wins the pawn. Surprise, surprise. And what is happening now? 5 pawns, rook and 5 pawns for me, rook and 3 pawns for Isabel. Um, I'm ahead by 2 pawns, but my pawn on f7 is in danger. And once it's lost, then the other pawns I have will also be in danger. I send my rook to b5. Why? Well, I'm going to lose some of these pawns. At least let's win the c pawn. Even though the computer would rather have my f6 go to f5. I lost a pawn. I'm now 1 pawn ahead. Now I'm 2 pawns ahead. Because I got the c5 pawn. This is a big miss. This was obvious. A computer wants Isabel to take my pawn on f6 and also attack my e6 and g6 pawns. He said no reason why to push now the f pawn to f4. Yes, you want to push your pawn as much as possible, but this is not the only thing that should be in your mind. My pawn goes to f5. Computer would rather have my rook go to f5. Yes, but then it could be in danger from the king or the other pawns. Rook goes to g7. It says to go to f6. Check with my rook from d5. King goes to e3. And now I start pushing the pawn. I see that my c pawn is passed pawn after all these exchanges. The only passed pawn in the board. If I can push it as much as possible, either it will promote or I might win material if Isabel can do it to avoid the promotion. Here things let's see, we finished 40 moves and now I'm ahead by 1.99. Great moves is the computer. Okay, lose the pawn on g6. I protect the one on e6. King goes to f3, far away. You want your king to be as near as possible, not as far as possible from action. My pawn goes to c4. Pawn goes to c3. I'm near promotion. 2 more moves. Pawn to c2. 1 move away from promotion. But of course now I cannot push it because there's a rook on g1 that will grab it. To find another way. Computer wants my rook to go immediately to d1. I was thinking of that, but I said let's first get rid of the other pawns. But no need to do it because if Isabel took my pawn on f4, then f5, then my e6 pawn will take back. And from 674, now I'm ahead by 5, pawn 33. Now I'm really winning the game after all these pawn exchanges. So the game reached a crucial phase where players had to be very, very careful with rooks and pawns, where a small deviation from the perfect could cost dearly. And I think that's what happened to Isabel. King takes, of course. And now I'm only 1 pawn ahead, but what a pawn. It's my c2 pawn that's 1 square away from promotion. And my rook goes to d1. And if Isabel wants to exchange rooks, my pawn promotes. Otherwise, my pawn promotes by itself. King goes to g3 check, postpone my promotion. King goes to g2. I want to be near the pawn to promote, but computer doesn't like it. Wants my king on g4. Oh no, look what's happening. By standing my king on g2 instead of g4, I cannot push my c2 pawn because it is pinned. I even tried to push it. Computer said no, it is pinned because the rook on g2. Let me check first. Not a good idea. King goes to d3. I have to. Still, I'm winning, but I have to think again how to win the game. Check here. King to b1. Yep. So 50 moves finished. I'm 1 square away from promoting my c2 pawn. Not only that, if it goes to c1, it's protected twice, both my rook on d1 and king on b1, and I'm ahead by 6.85. Let's see what will happen next. Well, Isabel wants to stop promotion, so of course I win the rook. And now Isabel would like to take my pawn because look, if I lose the pawn on e6, then the f4 pawn can not exactly promote, but he can threaten a promotion, and I would have to sacrifice my rook for the pawn, and game ends in a draw. That's why I must keep my e6 pawn so long as there is an f4 pawn on white pawn on the board. And now this game is continuing, but here it seems after this move, I'm not sure what Isabel would have done. Because either way or other, I would bring my rook on G1 and or F1 and win the pawn. But now things are easier. I don't even need my rook to win the pawn. With my pawn, I win it. And let's see what's happening now. We already started watching the M's. The moment that Isabel pressed the pawn to F5, there is M8, meaning in a perfect game, I'm mating in at most 8 moves. What did it take? It took exactly 8 moves. But is it because we both played perfectly or because we made the same kind of mistakes? Let's give a look. M8, M8, M7, M6, M6, M5. I'm trying, of course, to promote the pawn, M6, M5. I didn't play perfectly. M3 now, M3. 3 moves made if all goes okay. M2, M1, and that's it. So we defeated Isabel. And let's go to the bots to see what's happening. We completed the 1600 bots. The next bot is going to be 1700. Arthur from where? Which country is that? From Wales. Wales, of course, is part of the United Kingdom. It is a peninsula on the west part of Great Britain, neighboring England. It has its own language. And Arthur, I'm going to face Arthur with a rating of 1700. See if I can defeat him as easily as Isabella at the 1600, or if the bots will really start becoming tougher after Arthur have Jonas and Isla 1700. Then we have 3 bots of 1800, 3 of 1900. And 3 of 2000. Let's see how much we can go, because now the bots will become stronger than me, at least nominally. The 1700 of Arthur is more than my official 1631 or my unofficial 1656 rating. How are the other tournaments we are interested in doing? Let's go here. Let's go to the tournament directory. And the grecochess 64, we have 5 players registered until now. We need 64 to start it. It can take some time. I'm sure it will take some time, and when we are ready, we'll start. How are the other tournaments doing? The annual, the chess.com Daily Chess Championship. We're near the end of the first round. I already advanced the second round, and we have 38 games remaining. And let's see how is the underwater moonlight going. We already reached the third round, the semifinals. Let's look at the pairings. There are 2 groups of 6 players each, 12 players remaining. In group 1, we have Tinan Fu from Greenland leading with 5 points, while Iraq Lion seems to have given up, lost out of timed out in all games. And group 2, Maxim Govoruk, who was the runner-up, the second best player in my Greco Chess Championship, is leading with 5 points and has not lost a single point. That's what's happening now. But next one, we'll try once again the puzzle rating. See if we can beat a record of 50 and what we can learn out of them, because it's a very, very instructive. If you have a puzzle position in your real game, make sure you don't miss it. I remember a particular puzzle I did where I thought I had lost a rook, but then because I had done the puzzle, I saw that if I sacrificed my queen, in addition to being down a rook, I was also down a rook and a queen. I had checkmate in 2 moves. Next move. In your comments, if you have faced the bots, I'd love to see how you have been doing against them. How far have you been able to go? And of course, if you try the puzzle rush, how have you been able to perform? Thanks to all the viewers, the subscribers, the comments and the likes. This is grecochess. I'm Harry Los Goodbye.